very identity as protector of Asgard had vanished without a trace. But what happened next would humiliate him more than any defeat in battle. To get his hammer back, Thor would have to do something that went against every fiber of his warrior identity. You won't believe the disguise he ends up in. It all began on what should have been an ordinary morning in Asgard. Picture Thor reaching for the leather grip that had been at his side for countless centuries, his fingers closing around nothing but empty air. The spot where Mjolnir should rest felt cold and wrong, like a missing tooth that your tongue keeps finding. Thor's morning routine, as predictable as sunrise over Asgard's golden halls, shattered in that single moment of realization. The hammer forged by dwarven masters, the weapon that could summon lightning and level mountains, had vanished without so much as a whisper of sound. The initial shock hit Thor like a physical blow. His hand remained suspended in space, still reaching for what wasn't there. Then panic crept in, cold and relentless. He let out a blood-curdling roar of sheer rage, the whole palace trembling. Without Mjolnir, he was powerless, vulnerable, and mocked, stripped of the weapon that made him Asgard's primary defender. The enemies that prowled the borders of the Nine Realms knew about his mighty hammer. They counted on Thor's strength to keep them at bay. Now that strength was gone. Word spread through Asgard's halls faster than wildfire. The other gods gathered in emergency council, their faces grave as they grasped the full scope of the crisis. Odin's ravens had brought no news. The watchmen at the gates had seen nothing. Mjolnir had simply disappeared, as if it had never existed at all. The assembled gods understood what Thor's loss meant for their realm. Asgard stood vulnerable, its greatest protector reduced to a shadow of his former self. Loki stepped forward through the crowd of worried gods, his familiar, cunning smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He offered to investigate the theft using his shape-shifting abilities, volunteering to venture where other gods could not go undetected. The council accepted his proposal immediately, desperate for any lead in their search. Thor watched his brother prepare for the mission, knowing that Loki's success or failure would determine his own fate. Loki first borrowed Freya's magic feathered coat, allowing him to fly in falcon form to Jotunheim without raising alarms. Each dead end pushed Thor deeper into desperation. He imagined facing his enemies defenseless, their laughter echoing as they realized the thunder god carried no thunder. The trail finally led to the most dangerous territory of all, Jotunheim, the realm of the giants. Loki strode into the council chamber with the confident gait of someone who had solved a mystery, but his expression carried an ominous weight. The giant Thrym, lord of the frost giants, had openly boasted about his theft from his massive throne of ice and stone. He had buried Mjolnir 8 leagues beneath the frozen earth of his realm, thrice deeper than any giant's hall, he claimed, placing it where even Thor's strength would be useless. Thrym had what he thought was a simple demand for the Norse gods. He wanted the beautiful goddess Freya as his bride in exchange for the hammer's return. The giant had fixated on her legendary beauty and grace, convinced that possessing both Mjolnir and the goddess of love would make him the most powerful being in all the 9 realms. His arrogance knew no bounds as he described his elaborate wedding plans to Loki, speaking of golden halls and feasts that would last for weeks. Thrym believed the gods had no choice but to accept his terms. When Loki spoke to the council about Thrym's demand, the council fell silent. Freya's reaction shattered the tense quiet that followed Loki's report, causing her rage to break the Brysinger necklace, its gems scattering across the floor in glittering fragments. She declared she would rather throw herself into the deepest ocean than marry the frost giant who dared make such a demand. The gods found themselves trapped in an impossible situation. They could sacrifice one of their most beloved goddesses to a giant's lust, or they could leave Thor permanently weakened and Asgard vulnerable to every enemy that prowled the borders. The council erupted in frantic debate. Some suggested launching a full assault on Jotunheim, but Thrym's fortress was impregnable and his army vast. Others proposed trickery or negotiation, but every path led to either devastating war or humiliating surrender. Heimdall, the far-seeing guardian who watched over the Rainbow Bridge, had remained silent throughout the heated discussions. When he finally spoke, his words stopped every conversation in the hall. His suggestion was so outrageous, so completely unthinkable, that even Loki's jaw dropped open in shock. The gods stared at Heimdall as if he had lost his mind, but they were out of other options. What he proposed, however, would challenge everything Thor stood for as a warrior. Heimdall's words hung in the air like a challenge to the very foundations of Norse honor. The far-seeing god had suggested that Thor disguise himself as a bride and infiltrate Thrym's wedding feast to recover Mjolnir. He spoke with calm authority, tie housewife's keys about his waist, and pin bridal jewels upon his breast. The idea was so fundamentally opposed to Norse concepts of masculine honor that Thor's initial response shook the very walls of Asgard. He declared the plan preposterous and swore he would never hear the end of it if word spread that the Thunder God had dressed as a woman. The assembled gods watched in tense silence as their mightiest protector wrestled with a challenge that could not be solved through brute force or lightning strikes. They had already considered launching a full assault on Jotunheim, but Thrym's fortress was impregnable and his army vast. No other choice remained. Thor paced the hall like a caged wolf, his massive fists clenched as he grappled with the impossible choice between his warrior's pride and his duty to protect Asgard. Every instinct in his body rebelled against the idea of abandoning his identity as a fearsome warrior to play the role of a delicate bride. Loki stepped forward with barely contained excitement, volunteering to accompany Thor as his maidservant. The trickster god's eagerness to participate in this elaborate deception revealed his true nature. While Thor struggled with the concept, Loki was already plotting the specifics of costumes, mannerisms, and the lies they would need to maintain throughout their dangerous mission. The transformation began with layers of bridal linen draped over Thor's massive frame. Servants brought forth delicate jewelry, housewife's keys that symbolized domestic authority, and a dainty hood for his head. Finally came the precious necklace of Brisingar. Each item added to the disguise felt like another blow to Thor's warrior identity. When he finally looked at his reflection, the god of thunder saw an unconvincing bride staring back at him. Thor finally accepted the plan because no alternative existed. The unlikely pair prepared to set off for enemy territory, where their deception would face its ultimate test among giants, eager to celebrate their lord's triumph. The great hall of Thrym's fortress buzzed with excitement as giants gathered to witness their lord's marriage to the most beautiful goddess in all the 9 realms. Thor sat at the high table in his bridal disguise, surrounded by massive frost giants who raised their drinking horns in celebration. The feast spread before them displayed the giants' wealth and power. Roasted oxen filled enormous platters, fresh salmon gleamed on silver dishes, and barrels of mead stood ready to fuel the night's festivities. Thor's legendary appetite struck like a thunderbolt. He polished off an ox and ate whole salmon in moments, tearing through the meat as if he hadn't eaten in weeks. 3 measures of mead vanished as quickly as if someone had poured them into a bottomless pit. The assembled giants watched in stunned silence as the delicate bride consumed more food than most warriors could handle. Thrym's eyes narrowed with growing suspicion. This goddess ate like a battle-hardened warrior, returning from a long campaign, not like the refined Freya he expected to marry. Loki stepped forward with the smooth confidence of a master storyteller. He spun a tale about Freya's 8-day fast in eager anticipation of reaching Jotunheim and marrying the mighty Thrym. The explanation painted a picture of a lovesick goddess, so excited about her wedding that she had refused all food during her journey. The giants nodded in understanding, their suspicions melting away as they accepted this romantic explanation. Thrym felt honored by such devotion and relaxed completely, his doubts vanishing. Beneath his bridal veil, Thor's rage simmered like molten metal ready to explode. Every moment at the feast brought new challenges as he struggled to maintain feminine mannerisms while surrounded by his enemies. His massive hands shook with barely controlled fury as he watched the giants celebrate what they believed was their victory over Asgard. The critical moment finally arrived. Thrym commanded his servants to bring Mjolnir forth, the very moment Thor had trained his eyes on since dawn. The servants placed the legendary weapon before the disguised bride as part of the traditional ceremony. Thor's fingers closed around Mjolnir's familiar handle, and lightning immediately crackled through the hall. He ripped away his bridal veil and roared his true identity to the shocked giants. Thrym's eyes widened in terror as he realized the bride he had been celebrating was actually the god of thunder himself. Thor swung Mjolnir, killing Thrym instantly after crushing his skull with Mjolnir, then turned on the assembled giants, and even the pleading giantess met Mjolnir's crack before the hall fell silent. The theft that had begun with arrogance ended in complete destruction. This tale reveals how even the mightiest heroes must sometimes sacrifice their pride to protect what matters most. Back in Asgard, the Aesir never spoke of the bearded bride again, though a few still hide a smirk when Thor raises Mjolnir. And we end this story with a very valuable lesson. Never steal Thor's hammer. And if you're going to, don't make him dress like a woman. Loki's punishment was brutal. Bound deep within a cavern, his body lashed to 3 jagged rocks with the entrails of his own son. Above him, a serpent hung poised, venom dripping relentlessly onto his exposed skin. This scene, drawn from the poetic Edda and the prose Edda, became a symbol of both divine vengeance and suffering that echoed through Norse legend. But the gods never counted on one presence: Sigyn, Loki's faithful wife. Her hands trembled as she knelt beside him, catching each drop of poison before it could sear his flesh. Her quiet devotion became a fragile shield against the god's wrath. Why did she choose loyalty over escape? The answer reveals a truth about love that endures even when the world itself seems lost to darkness. Yet before the cavern, before the venom and the silence, there was a betrayal that shook the heart of Asgard. Baldur was the light of Asgard, cherished by gods and mortals alike. His laughter filled the halls, a warmth that even the golden apples of Idun could not rival. When ominous dreams began to trouble him, his mother Frigg, desperate to protect her son, secured oaths from every creature and object in existence never to harm him. All, that is, except the mistletoe, too slight, too innocent to warrant suspicion. Loki saw opportunity in what others dismissed. He fashioned a dart from that fragile branch and sought out Hoder, Baldur's blind brother. "Here," Loki murmured, placing the weapon in Hoder's uncertain grasp, "let me guide your hand." The dart struck its mark. In an instant, Baldur's light was snuffed out, his presence gone from the world. The gods stood in stunned silence, their joy shattered. Loki lingered in the shadows, the faintest smile on his lips, before slipping away unseen. The prose Edda tells us the pyre burned for 9 nights. Baldur's wife, Nanna, overcome with grief, cast herself onto the flames, her spirit entwined with his. The gods heaped treasures upon the funeral bier, Odin's ring Draupnir, Baldur's own ship Hringhorni, to honor him, but no offering could fill the void left behind. The air grew heavy with suspicion. As the smoke twisted skyward, word spread of an old woman whispering to Hoder in the moments before the fatal blow. When Thor forced the truth from a trembling servant, silence fell like a shroud. Loki's name was not spoken, but its weight pressed upon every heart. The gods had tolerated his mischief, his clever lies, even the theft of Sif's hair. But this was different. The poetic Edda names him plainly: Loki, the guileful who brought it about, from which all misfortune came. Odin convened the gods to pass judgment. No mead flowed, no boasts rang out. The All-Father's single eye burned cold as he named Loki Oathbreaker and Kinslayer. Weapons gleamed in restless hands. Even gentle Friar's fingers tightened around his sword. Loki understood the god's fury. He fled Asgard, his mind racing with schemes. As told in the prose Edda, he built a lodge in the mountains, doors on every side, always watching for his pursuers. Still, he could not outrun their vengeance. Odin's gaze found him, even in hiding. When the gods arrived, Loki tried to slip away, transforming into a salmon to evade capture in the river's swift current. But Thor's grip proved stronger than fate. Dragged back through the gates he once helped raise, Loki passed faces twisted with anger and betrayal. The gods' judgment was swift. The path ahead led not to mercy, but to a place where pain and silence waited in the damp and the dark. They forced Loki into the heart of the earth, a cavern where the air pressed cold and heavy, and every sound echoed off stone walls, slick with damp. Water dripped steadily from above, each drop magnifying the hush that settled over the gods as they set to their grim task. The stench of venom lingered, sharp and persistent, mingling with the iron tang of old blood. Odin's single eye caught the flicker of Skadi's movement. A silent nod passed between them, sealing what would come next. 3 massive boulders, freshly gouged with holes, stood ready. The gods had not brought chains or rope. Instead, they made Loki's punishment a reflection of his own chaos. The prose. Edda tells us they transformed one son, Vali, into a wolf who slew his brother, Nari. With the entrails of Nari turned to iron by the gods' will, they bound Loki fast, wrists, neck, thighs, and ankles locked tight against the unyielding stone. As the Völuspá declares, with the guts of his ice-cold son, the killer is bound. Each knot and twist was deliberate, a reminder that his own blood now held him captive. The weight of the rocks pressed into his flesh, a constant ache that would never fade. Skadi stepped forward, her presence sharp as frost. In her hands a serpent writhed, its fangs gleaming. She fixed the creature to a stalactite directly above Loki's face. "For Balder," she said, her voice steady and cold. The serpent's jaws parted, and a bead of venom gathered at its tip. It hung for a moment, then fell. Loki's scream reverberated through the cavern, his body arching in agony as the venom burned into his skin. The pain was relentless, searing into bone, and the world above felt its echoes, earthquakes shaking Midgard, rivers shifting, the roots of Yggdrasil quivering. The gods watched in silence, their faces unreadable. Justice, they believed, had been served. As the serpent's venom continued its slow assault, the rhythm of torment became all-consuming. The next drop formed, poised to fall. Then a figure emerged at the edge of the chamber, a woman, silent, a wooden bowl cradled in her hands. Sigin's arms were blistered, her sleeves stained, but her grip was unwavering as she stepped into the circle of pain. The cavern held its breath. Sigyn knelt, her presence a quiet defiance. The venom hissed into the bowl, wood darkening with each drop. The gods turned away, their judgment complete, but the story within the cavern was only beginning. The bowl rested in Sigyn's hands, its wooden sides polished by hours of silent endurance. She knelt on the cold stone, skirts bunched beneath her, and waited for the serpent's venom to fall. The first drop struck with a hiss, a thin wisp of smoke curling up as Loki's breath caught in his throat. She kept her gaze fixed on the bowl, her resolve anchored by the rhythm of her task. Time unraveled in the cavern, marked only by the relentless cadence of the venom. Drip, catch. The liquid sizzled as it struck the wood, the heat seeping through Sigyn's calloused palms. Each shift of her grip was subtle, a quiet adjustment to keep the bowl steady as her arms ached. Above, the serpent's shadow twisted over the stone, its coils unmoving, its venom gathering in slow, deliberate drops. Loki whimpered, bracing for pain that had become his constant companion. The sound of his dread was sharper than his cries. The air hung heavy with the stench of scorched flesh and the metallic sting of poison. The darkness pressed in, broken only by the faint glimmer of Sigyn's tears as they mixed with venom in the bowl, each drop a testament to her resolve. The silence between drops was punctuated by Loki's ragged breaths and the distant echo of water dripping from the cavern walls. Sigyn's world narrowed to the weight in her arms and the threat above. The bowl filled, the venom rising perilously close to the rim. Sigyn's muscles trembled, but she did not let her grip falter. When at last the bowl brimmed, she had no choice but to turn away. In that brief moment, as she emptied the venom onto the rocks, Loki's body convulsed, his scream raw and unrestrained. The poison ate into the stone, leaving blackened scars as Sigyn hurried to wipe the bowl clean and return to her vigil. For time beyond reckoning, Sigyn remained. The myth offers no window into her thoughts, only the image of her kneeling, unwavering as Loki's mind splintered under the weight of his agony. Was she remembering laughter in sunlit halls, or simply unable to imagine leaving him alone in the dark? The venom's rhythm never changed. The bowl would fill. Loki would suffer. Sigyn would endure. In the hush that followed each scream, a question lingered, one that neither gods nor mortals could answer. Love in the dark was never simple. While the gods turned away, Sigyn remained, her presence reshaping the meaning of Loki's punishment. His betrayals had echoed through Asgard, yet her loyalty was a force the gods never expected. The Eddas offer no window into Sigyn's thoughts, recording only her actions. Blistered hands, a steady bowl, venom caught before it could sear flesh. This silence leaves space for us to wonder. Was it love that held her there, or a deeper sense of duty, something older and more enduring than the gods' own laws? Loki, once the master of deception, now depended on the mercy of the one he had so often left in the shadows. When the bowl overflowed and Sigyn turned away, each drip crept like fire through him, twisting his features in agony. His eyes, when they met hers, flickered with both gratitude and resentment. He needed her, but the venom's torment mingled need with bitterness. Still, Sigyn returned every time, catching the next drop before it could fall. The myths do not say what passed between them in those moments, only that she stayed, her resolve unbroken. Scholars often call Sigyn the embodiment of loyalty, the ultimate symbol of spousal devotion. Yet, her sacrifice was more than an act of love. It was a quiet rebellion. By kneeling in the cavern, she defied the gods' vision of justice. Odin had crafted Loki's punishment to be absolute, to break him alone in the dark. Sigyn's refusal to abandon her husband became a shield, her presence a silent protest that denied the gods complete victory. The Eddas never assign her a motive, leaving modern readers to fill the silence with their own questions and interpretations. Was her endurance an act of compassion, or a challenge to the order imposed by the gods? Each drip marked the passage of time, each bowlful a measure of suffering and steadfastness. Loki's laughter, once quick and sharp, faded into broken gasps. His words, sometimes curses, sometimes pleas, found no purchase. Sigyn's hands grew raw and ruined, but she did not falter. The cycle of pain and mercy continued, unbroken. In the end, it was not just Loki who endured the gods' punishment. Sigyn's vigil transformed it, turning isolation into a shared ordeal. In the darkness, her silent defiance and unwavering love became part of the myth, a testament to the power of presence, even when the world has turned away. Sigyn's vigil stands as one of Norse myth's quiet marvels, a steady presence in the shadows, her strength measured not in battle, but in endurance beside the one the gods condemned. As Loki writhed beneath the venom's relentless burn, Sigyn's hands never wavered. The Eddas remember her not for words or deeds of glory, but for the silent rhythm of her care. Her story reminds us that sometimes love endures in darkness. Sigyn's vigil continues until the twilight of the gods, Ragnarok, whenever that may come. Would you have stayed? If Sigyn's silent strength moved you, let us know in the comments or share your favorite Norse hero below. You've heard of a goddess whose beauty was unmatched. But what if I told you that her beauty wasn't what it seemed? In fact, her allure led to some of the darkest consequences in ancient myth. This goddess, adored by many, held the power to captivate anyone with a mere glance. She was so beautiful that her charm could sway the gods, kings, and mortals alike. But this beauty came with a deadly price. The goddess we're talking about is none other than Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love and beauty. While she is often depicted as the epitome of grace, sensuality, and allure, her beauty was more of a curse than a gift. Aphrodite's powers extended beyond just physical beauty. Her charm was irresistible, but it came at a cost. Her very presence could bring turmoil. Many heroes and kings fell victim to their obsession with her. Take Paris, for instance. His decision to choose Aphrodite as the fairest of the goddesses set in motion the events that led to the Trojan War. His desire for her beauty caused the death of thousands and the fall of Troy. But Aphrodite's beauty didn't just destroy men, it could break gods too. The tale of her and Ares, the god of war, exemplifies this. While Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus, the god of blacksmiths, her passionate affair with Ares led to chaos among the gods. Her beauty wasn't just about attraction, it caused jealousy, betrayal, and ultimately destruction. Despite her dazzling appearance, Aphrodite was also a figure of deceit and destruction, proving that beauty, when it holds such power, can be dangerous. It's no wonder the ancient Greeks warned that appearances can be deceiving. Aphrodite's beauty may have dazzled the world, but her story teaches us that sometimes what's on the surface can mask a much darker reality. So, was Aphrodite's beauty a blessing or a curse? The myths suggest that beauty, when wielded by the gods, is never what it seems. If you want to uncover more hidden truths about gods and goddesses from the ancient world, hit that subscribe button. There's so much more to explore in these captivating stories of the past.
Athena, the goddess of wisdom, war, and strategy, was one of the most powerful deities in Greek mythology. Feared by enemies, honored by heroes, and even challenging Zeus himself, Athena's legacy shaped legends, wars, and the very foundations of civilization. But was she truly a goddess of justice, or was there a darker side to her wisdom? Let's dive into the real story of Athena. Athena wasn't born like other gods. She burst fully grown from Zeus's head, armed with a spear and shield, a goddess of war and wisdom from the very start. But her story is more than just divine power. It's one of strategy, conflict, and influence that shaped the Greek world. The protector of heroes, Athena wasn't just a warrior. She was a tactician, a guide, and the ultimate ally to heroes. She helped Odysseus outwit the gods, gave Perseus the shield to defeat Medusa, and was the unseen force behind many Greek victories. The battle for Athens, Athena and Poseidon competed for control of the greatest city in Greece. Poseidon offered a mighty ocean, but Athena gave the olive tree, a symbol of wisdom and prosperity. The people chose her gift, and Athens was named in her honor. The merciless judge? Athena may have been wise, but was she just? When Medusa was assaulted in her temple, Athena didn't punish Poseidon, she punished Medusa, turning her into a monster. Later, she created the first court of law, showing her power wasn't just in battle, it was in justice, law, and politics. Wisdom and war, always balanced. Unlike Ares, the god of chaos and bloodshed, Athena's warfare was tactical, calculated, and precise. She was the goddess of the battlefield, but also the goddess of philosophy, craftsmanship, and knowledge, a balance between violence and intelligence. Her lasting legacy, Athena's symbols, the owl, the shield, and the olive tree, still represent wisdom, strategy, and peace today. The Parthenon, her great temple, still stands, and her influence can be seen in modern philosophy, war strategy, and even democracy itself. Athena wasn't just a goddess of wisdom. She was a warrior, a ruler, and a force that shaped civilizations. But was she truly wise, or just the ultimate strategist who always got her way? Want more deep dives into legendary gods and goddesses? Subscribe now and uncover the myths and realities of ancient deities.
What makes Zeus, the mighty king of the Greek gods, one of the most fascinating figures in mythology? Is it his unparalleled power over the skies, his cunning strategies, or the sheer drama of his endless affairs? While his tales are legendary, there's one story that stands out: the epic battle that earned Zeus his throne, the Titanomachy. This isn't just a story of a god's rise to power, it's a tale of rebellion, alliances, betrayal, and the ultimate struggle between two generations of divine beings. Stay with us as we dive into the myth of the Titanomachy, Zeus's role in overthrowing the Titans, and the secrets that shaped his reign. Before Zeus became the king of the gods, his father, Cronus, ruled the cosmos. Cronus was the youngest of the Titans, a race of primordial deities born of Uranus, the sky, and Gaia, the earth. The Titans were immensely powerful, but also deeply flawed. Cronus had gained power by overthrowing his own father, Uranus, in a brutal act of betrayal. But just as Cronus had betrayed his father, a prophecy loomed over him, warning that one of his own children would overthrow him. To prevent this, Cronus took a horrifying precaution. He swallowed each of his children as they were born, imprisoning them in his stomach for eternity. But Gaia, the ever-watchful mother of the gods, wasn't about to let this happen again. When Rhea, Cronus's wife, gave birth to Zeus, Gaia devised a plan. Rhea tricked Cronus by handing him a stone wrapped in swaddling clothes, which he swallowed, believing it was his newborn son. Meanwhile, Zeus was spirited away to a hidden cave on the island of Crete, where he was raised in secret. Zeus grew up under the care of nymphs and a goat named Amalthea, who nourished him with her milk. As he matured, Zeus learned of his father's tyranny and vowed to free his siblings and challenge Cronus's rule. Zeus couldn't take on Cronus and the Titans alone. He needed allies. His first move was to rescue his siblings trapped inside Cronus. With the help of the goddess Metis, Zeus tricked Cronus into drinking a potion that caused him to vomit up his children: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, fully grown and ready for battle. Now united, the 6 Olympian siblings declared war on Cronus and the Titans. But the Titans were powerful, and the war, known as the Titanomachy, would rage for 10 years with no clear victor. Realizing they needed an advantage, Zeus turned to the most unlikely of allies, the Hecatonchires and the Cyclopes. These were monstrous children of Gaia and Uranus, imprisoned in Tartarus by Cronus out of fear of their immense power. The Hecatonchires had 100 hands and unparalleled strength, while the Cyclopes were master craftsmen. Zeus descended into Tartarus, defeated its terrifying guardians, and freed these imprisoned beings. In gratitude, the Cyclopes forged weapons for Zeus and his brothers. Zeus received the thunderbolt, Poseidon the trident, and Hades a helmet of invisibility. With these tools and the raw power of the Hecatonchires, the Olympians finally had the upper hand. The final clash of the Titanomachy was a cosmic spectacle. The Titans, led by Cronus, unleashed their full fury, shaking the very foundations of the universe. Mountains crumbled, seas boiled, and the skies erupted in chaos. But Zeus and his allies were relentless. Zeus hurled his thunderbolts with unerring precision, scorching the battlefield and scattering the Titans' ranks. Poseidon unleashed massive earthquakes, and Hades used his helmet of invisibility to sow confusion among their enemies. The Hecatonchires proved invaluable, hurling massive boulders with their 100 hands, overwhelming the Titans. One by one, the Titans fell, their immense power no match for the combined might of the Olympians and their allies. Cronus was the last to fall. Zeus struck him down with a thunderbolt so powerful that it split the skies. With Cronus's defeat, the Titanomachy was over. With the Titans defeated, Zeus and his siblings faced a choice: what to do with their vanquished foes. In a move both strategic and ruthless, Zeus imprisoned the Titans in Tartarus, deep within the underworld. where they would remain for eternity under the watchful eye of the Hecaton Kyries. Zeus then divided the cosmos with his brothers. He claimed the skies as his domain, Poseidon took the seas, and Hades ruled the underworld. Together, they established the rule of the Olympians, with Zeus as their undisputed king. But the Titanomachy left scars. Gaia, enraged by the imprisonment of her Titan children, gave birth to new monstrous beings to challenge Zeus's reign. Among them was Typhon, a creature so fearsome that even the gods trembled before him. Typhon's battle with Zeus is another story for another day, but it serves as a reminder that power in the ancient world was never secure. Zeus's rise to power marked the beginning of a new era, but his reign was anything but peaceful. While he was the king of the gods, his rule was marked by constant challenges, from rebellious mortals to jealous deities and his own unquenchable desire for love and control. Zeus was both a protector and a tyrant, a figure who inspired awe and fear. His thunderbolts were a symbol of justice, but they were also a tool of destruction. He fathered countless children, both mortal and divine, and his many affairs often sparked conflict among the gods. Yet, despite his flaws, Zeus's rule brought stability to a chaotic world. Under his reign, the gods established order, overseeing the realms of humans and maintaining the delicate balance between earth, sea, and sky. The myth of Zeus and the Titanomachy isn't just a tale of war. It's a story about the cycles of power and rebellion. Just as Zeus overthrew Cronus, who had overthrown Uranus, Greek myths suggest that even the mightiest rulers are vulnerable to the forces of change. Zeus's story reminds us that leadership comes with its own set of challenges. It's not just about gaining power, it's about maintaining it, often at great cost. Zeus's rise to power is one of the most thrilling tales in mythology, filled with battles, alliances, and sacrifices. But what do you think? Was Zeus a just ruler, or was he simply another tyrant destined to fall like the Titans before him? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed this dive into Greek mythology, share it with fellow myth lovers, and subscribe to our channel for more epic tales from the ancient world. Until next time, remember, the gods may rule from above, but their stories remind us of the struggles we all face below. Ever wondered what it would be like to walk through the ancient world and encounter mythical creatures from Greek mythology? Get ready to meet the beasts that shaped legends. In Greek mythology, creatures were more than just beasts. They were symbols of the forces of nature, God's will, and humanity's struggle with the unknown. From the terrifying Minotaur lurking in the labyrinth to the mesmerizing sirens luring sailors to their doom, these creatures were as captivating as they were dangerous. The mighty Hydra, with its multiple heads that regrew each time they were cut off, was a symbol of unstoppable power. The Cerberus, the three-headed dog guarding the gates of the underworld, represented the barrier between life and death. But not all mythical creatures were monsters. The graceful Pegasus, a winged horse born from the blood of Medusa, symbolizes freedom and the pursuit of the heavens. These creatures still live on in our stories, haunting the shadows of ancient Greece and whispering through the winds of time. Which Greek mythological creature fascinates you the most? Share your thoughts and don't forget to subscribe for more legendary tales from Greek mythology. Hey, myth explorers, ready to wander off the beaten mythological path? You know Zeus's thunderbolts and Hercules' labors. Fine. But what about the day the bees turned their backs on their god? Or the huntress whose sons were cursed to become flesh-hungry bears? Or a girl so clever Athena loved her, then hated her enough to shrink her to an ant? And finally, an apple that quite literally broke a young man's heart. Keep watching. Each tale swerves from wonder to horror to bittersweet awe, and the last lines of every story connect like hidden threads. Miss even 30 seconds, and you'll lose the clue that ties them all together. When Zeus married Hera, Hermes carried gold-edged invites to every being, mortal, divine, animal. Chelone, a river nymph, accepted with a careless nod, but when the day came, she sniffed at the sky, poked the embers in her hearth, and sighed, "My little house is warmer than Olympus." Hours later, the wedding procession rolled past in thundercloud pomp. Hermes spotted Chelone's empty chair. Rage ignited in his silver sandals. He swooped down, seized the entire cottage, roof, pillars, walls, Chelone still clutching a teacup inside. One spell later, cottage and nymph fused into a single creature, shell on the back, head poked out, doomed to crawl forever carrying the home she wouldn't abandon. The first tortoise. Locals swear that on spring evenings, if you kneel by a brook and whisper, "Leaving soon?" any tortoise nearby will retreat into its shell, tiny echo of a goddess-scorned recluse. Long before "Save the Bees" was a slogan, there was Aristaeus, demigod shepherd, inventor of cheese, olive oil, and above all, beekeeping. People swore the hum of his hives kept sickness out of the valley. Then one midsummer dawn, every bee lay motionless, wings stiff as parchment. The air that once thrummed with life sat dead and silent. The villagers called it the funeral of the bees. Desperate, Aristaeus trekked through reeds to consult Proteus, the shape-shifting sea prophet. Proteus, half seal, half seer, spat seawater and hissed, "The nymphs of the meadows curse you for the part you played in Eurydice's death. Mourn in their tongue, blood, smoke, and remembrance. The penance? 4 pure bulls and 4 unblemished heifers sacrificed at a spring, their carcasses left to rot beneath the sun. An act so revolting only the gods could read its poetry." Aristaeus obeyed, mouth clamped against nausea. On the third sunrise, he returned. From one bull's ribcage poured a golden cloud, brand new bees, born from death itself, swirling like incense into the sky. The message was brutal but clear. Regeneration demands sacrifice. Aristaeus fell to his knees, honeyed tears streaking his cheeks as the swarm chose his outstretched arms as their first hive. King Minos wanted an arm for one soldier, so Festus cast Talos, a walking fortress of molten copper now hardened to bronze. 3 times a day, Talos circled the island. Invaders saw a man-sized sunrise sprinting the shoreline, hurling stones the size of oxen. Yet, the gods built Talos with a single flaw, a plug at his ankle, sealing a vein that pulsed ichor, divine lifeblood. Cue Jason and the Argonauts, desperate to dock. The witch Medea stepped forward, eyes glinting like mercury. "Mighty Talos, you are metal, but do you feel pain?" She sang of mortality, of rust, of endless duty with no rest. The bronze giant, half mind, half mechanism, knelt suddenly aware. A breeze teased the nail loose. One crimson gold jet spurted. Talos staggered, knees carving trenches in sand, and crashed, an empty shell echoing like a temple bell. Crete was silent but for the hiss of ichor boiling away. Local fishermen still claim some sunsets tint the sea bronze, Talos's lifeblood swirling just beneath the waves, hunting for its lost shell. Coronis of Thessaly loved Apollo, or thought she did, until a mortal soldier caught her eye. While Apollo healed plague in Delphi, Coronis entertained her new lover in secret. Only the raven, Apollo's avian spy, saw everything. The bird wrestled with the knowledge. If it spoke, a human would die. If it stayed silent, a god would suffer humiliation. Instinct 1, loyalty to the sun. It flew for 3 days, trailing white feathers through storm clouds, and crashed onto Apollo's lap to report the betrayal. Apollo's rage was surgical. One golden arrow, one heartbeat, Coronis felled. But as her blood soaked the sheets, guilt hit harder than plague, because Coronis carried his unborn son, Asclepius. Apollo yanked the child from the dying womb, gave him to the centaur Chiron, and spun on the trembling raven. You wanted me to see darkness. Now wear it. Flames the color of a lunar eclipse licked across white plumage, charring every feather jet black. The raven screeched, not from pain, but from shame immortalized. From then on, ravens lost the ability to speak in clear words. All that's left is the croak that sounds like a secret you can't quite make out. King Salmoneus looked at Olympus and saw a marketing opportunity. He forged iron wheels that struck bronze streets, sparking hellish fire. He hung bronze kettles along rope bridges, and when his servants tugged the ropes, they roared like thunder across the sky. During festivals, he hurled lit torches from his chariot, shouting, "Tremble, mortals! I am Zeus!" Crowds, half fearful, half entertained, showered him with offerings. Thunder for Hire became the hottest ticket north of Delphi, but word climbed the air like smoke, reached the real Zeus, who waited for the perfect dramatic sting. On Salmonia's grandest fate, dark clouds gathered, but the sky remained eerily quiet. Salmoneus rode out, ready to drop his counterfeit thunder. Zeus answered with the genuine article, a single bolt that vaporized the rope bridges, melted the bronze road into a river of screaming metal, and hurled Salmoneus, chariot, horses, ego, into Tartarus. There, chained to a rotating rock, he hears only one sound. Authentic thunder he can never claim. Locals swear the ruins of Salmonia still ring on electric nights. Metallic echoes of Zeus performing an audit on false advertising. Polyphonte, one-time devotee of Artemis, vowed to remain chaste, but Aphrodite, never fond of holdouts, infected her with lust for a passing bear. Yes, a bear. Polyphonte vanished into the woods and returned months later with twin boys, Agrius and Aureus, towering, coarse-haired, with appetites that chilled the blood. They laughed at altars, hunted travelers, and roasted human limbs over campfires. Zeus finally snapped. He ordered Hermes to punish the whole family in whatever way preserves terror for future ages. Hermes, unwilling to butcher newborns, enlisted Ares, who gleefully bound the twins upside down and hacked off hands and feet. But before the blade fell again, the gods changed their minds, opting for metamorphosis over gore. Polyphonte became the Strix, a death-omen owl whose shriek freezes armies. Aureus twisted into a towering eagle owl, herald of war. Agrius sank into the body of a vulture, forever gnawing carrion. And the family's hillside cave? Locals swear it still reeks of smoke and sweet meat. Farmers mark its mouth with iron nails. Iron, they say, silences bare-born ghosts. Next time an owl howls before battle, remember Polyphonte's cursed lullaby, a mother's love curdled into dread for every soldier who hears it. Athena once chose an Attic girl named Myrmex as her personal protege. The goddess introduced a dream project, the world's first plow. Myrmex watched, learned, then, intoxicated by the crowd's applause, whispered that she had invented the tool. Athena's gray eyes darkened. Soon after, a jealous wind shoved Myrmex while she harvested wheat. She staggered, dropped an armful of sheaves, and heard laughter, a cruel echo of her own boast. Athena emerged, face sorrowful. You craved the harvest without the humility. She tapped the girl's forehead. Instantly, Myrmex shrank, limbs splitting, waist pinching. An ant scuttled where a maiden had stood, destined to steal crumbs of grain for eternity, mimicking the theft of Athena's credit. Centuries later, Zeus needed loyal subjects for his son Aeacus in barren Aegina. He saw the ant swarm and, in a grim joke, transformed them into soldiers. The Myrmidons, silent, disciplined, famous under Achilles at Troy. The bravest army in myth owes its origin to a single boastful sentence. Medusa grew up alongside the breathtaking Adonis under the roof of King Cinyras. Where Adonis was radiant, Medusa was steady, god, confidant, brother in all but blood. When a boar gored Adonis in Aphrodite's sacred grove, every flower dimmed, and Medusa felt his chest collapse inward. Days later, they brought Adonis's body home. Medusa strung a rope from a pomegranate tree and hanged himself, grief carving deeper than any tusk. His wife Pelia followed. Aphrodite arrived, drenched in her own tears, too late to save them, but not too late to transform them. Medusa became the apple tree, branches heavy with fruit the color of heart blood. Pelia became the dove, eternal companion to Aphrodite, cooing in the apple's boughs. Their infant son, also named Medusa, was spared and ordered to Delos to teach islanders the craft of shearing sheep. Ever since, Greeks call flocks mela in his honor. Legend says when an apple falls perfectly into a lover's open palm, Medusa is granting a fragment of his devotion, a reminder that love can be both sweet and lethal. Every crunch echoes a heartbreak older than history. Careful who you offer an apple to. Aphrodite might just be listening. Which boundary breaker freaked you out most? Drop your vote below. Smash like if you'll think twice before faking thunder. Subscribe for Forgotten Monsters next week and ring the bell. Unlike Melinoe, notifications haunt only by day. See you in the echoes. Heroes, monsters, tragedies, you know the drill. Tonight we flip the script. Some little-known tales where wit, nerve, or kindness earn outright miracles. Glass number 1 holds a bronze serpent coiled around a sprig of green, and a boy who literally came back sweeter than honey. Knossos in midsummer smells of rosemary, sea salt, and beeswax. While the court argued harvest taxes, young Glaucus chased a bright blue lizard past the kitchens, through a corridor stacked with amphorae of fermenting honey, and, because small boys fit where gods do not, straight down a ladder into the palace cellars. Down there, the air was syrup thick. Glaucus peered into a half-open jar, hoping to see the lizard's tail. One wobble, a slip, a splash. The honey swallowed his cry, sealed itself like amber, and the cellar went still except for the slow fizz of wild yeast. When the nurse discovered an empty playroom, Minos promised royal exiles, or worse, to anyone who failed to find his heir. Search parties raked the island. An oracle finally muttered, "He is where sweetness turns to gold, and the color-changing calf is the compass." Everyone stared blankly, except one messenger who remembered a traveling seer rumored to solve riddles the way bards solve rhyme schemes. Polyidus arrived soaked in salt spray and sarcasm. Minos thrust him in front of the palace's miracle calf, white at dawn, tawny by noon, black at dusk. The king demanded an explanation, and his son before sundown. The seer stroked his beard, watched the calf cycle its living palette, and smiled. "The answer is not the hide, but the eyes," he mused. At dawn, the calf watched the white sun. At noon, bronze. At dusk, onyx night. It mirrored what it beheld. So must the prince. He is hidden where color vanishes, Polyidus concluded, and descended alone into the wine-dark storerooms. Lantern raised, he located the honey amphora, whose surface held no reflections, only silence. He cracked the seal, found Glaucus suspended in golden stillness, lips blue, limbs floating like reeds in amber. When guards hauled boy and jar to the throne room, Minos' relief curdled into fury. "Resurrect him," he ordered, "or you will keep him company." The seer and the honey coffin were locked inside a stone vault. The bar grinded shut. Torches flickered out. The only light came from honey's inner glow. Polyidus knelt, mind racing through every charm he knew. None could reverse 2 hours without breath. A soft hiss cut the darkness. A serpent, scales gold as harvest wheat, slipped under the door. Polydus, fearing venom, crushed it with a wine jug. Silence returned, briefly. A second serpent slid beside its fallen mate, circled the bottom, vanished into a crack, and re-emerged, clutching a sprig of leaves that glimmered in emerald fire. Pressed the herb to the dead serpent's mouth. In a shiver of sinew, the creature revived. The pair slithered away, leaving the leaf behind like a lesson. Polyidus's pulse hammered. He ground the glowing plant between stone shards, smeared the paste across Glaucus's cold lips, and half praying to gods who seldom pick up, waited. A heartbeat. 2. Then the boy coughed, honey and air and the shriek of returning life. He sat up wide-eyed, asking if lunch was ready. The vault erupted in shouts. Guards dragged them to Minos, whose relief eclipsed his threats. "Teach the child your art," the king commanded, "and you may leave Crete with both eyes intact." For 30 days, Polyidus tutored Glaucus, reading omens in bird flight, divining storms by the smell of stone, decoding dreams as if they were parchment. Each lesson the seer delivered with growing dread. Minos could weaponize prophecy. On the final morning, he presented Glaucus with a cup of wine to seal memory. The boy drank. Polyidus leaned close, whispered a single word, and the wine turned bitter. Glaucus spat it back onto Polyidus's lips. That was the spell. Every technique, every cosmic shortcut drained from the boy's mind like sand through a broken hourglass. He would live healthy, happy, but ordinary. The gift stayed locked in Polyidus's own skull. The seer departed at sunset, pockets empty except for a few stray violet leaves, the serpent herb. Some say he planted them across the Aegean. Others insist he fed them to bees, breeding honey that glows faintly green when moonlight is thin. In mountain apiaries of rural Greece, beekeepers